Hi, everyone. Joey Reese here with the Practice Center, where we discuss all the things around mindfulness, forgiveness, and attitudinal healing. And today I want to give you an introduction to attitudinal healing. And in fact, I want you to meet some folks from Attitudinal Healing International by sharing some of their video clips that exist in full on YouTube. So any of the clips that you see, I will link them below in the comments so you can watch the entire section. But the purpose of this video is to give you a little snippet about the history, kind of the philosophy, just some of the core principles. So then when you join me in a workshop, for example, next week, we're talking about attitudinal healing and the holidays. How can we go through the holidays with a little bit more peace? How can we choose to enjoy our family and friends if they have traditionally been a sore point or a struggle for you? So this way you'll know the core concepts and you can come in and just kind of talk about your stories and start working with your own perception and your own thoughts around the holidays. And then starting December 5th of 2021, we will be doing an attitudinal healing 6-week workshop. And because you'll have these principles under your belt, you'll understand the core principles of attitudinal healing and kind of the lens that we're looking at our life and our stories. Then you'll be able to dive right in and start talking about your specific stories and filtering it through a new lens, the lens of attitudinal healing in the safety of others. So it is a small group setting where you'll have a facilitator. In this case, it'll be me. To guide you through the questions and help orient you around one of the core concepts or one of the guidelines or the 12 principles. So today we're going to be going over a brief history of attitudinal healing, the core concepts of attitudinal healing, the 12 principles of attitudinal healing, and then the guidelines that are used before every workshop in every group. So with all of that, you should be ready to go.
Attitudinal healing is a way of feeling your mind to make peace of mind your only goal. It's letting go of your judgments. It's letting go of your guilt and making your only goal to have peace of mind and your only function forgiveness.
And it's also the realization that it's not people or experiences or events in the past that are making us upset in the present, but it's our thoughts, our attitudes, and our judgments about those things that cause us distress.
Healing. And I'm going to share with you a 2-minute video that Attitudinal Healing International has put out.
Attitudinal healing is a powerful yet simple method that guides people of all ages and circumstances to experience lasting love and inner peace. It helps heal the judgments, blame, shame, and self-condemnation that keeps us from real happiness. Attitudinal healing is based on the belief that it's not people or experiences from the past or even in the future that cause us to be upset. Rather, it's our thoughts, attitudes, and our judgments about them that cause us the distress. Healing results when we concentrate on changing our own attitudes rather than trying to change others. Guiding principles help us learn to look at pain from the past and fear of the future so we can choose to experience inner peace in the present. People from many cultures, faiths, and denominations, as well as those who follow no faith, participate in attitudinal healing. It doesn't tell you what to believe. Rather, it teaches you how to listen to your own inner wisdom and to make decisions based on love rather than fear. Attitudinal healing pioneered the peer support group model and training, which is now used in dozens of countries on 6 continents in numerous innovative ways, which include relationships and education, community programs, business, hospitals, health and wellness, racial healing, and prisons. As we change our minds, we change our lives. As we heal ourselves, the world heals with us.
In addition to that short, cute, descriptive video, there are tons of other videos on YouTube with Dr. Jerry Jampolsky and Dr. Diane Cirincione, who go on to describe the 12 principles, as well as the core concepts and kind of just the history. And you can really hear from the founder's mouth why this has been so important and what kinds of things that they've seen. So if you're interested in additional research and additional interviews that they've done, please, I've linked some of them below in the comments, but go ahead and just Google Attitudinal Healing or Attitudinal Healing International, and you'll get a plethora of additional info if you need that before you come into our support groups, our peer support groups. So in a nutshell, Attitudinal Healing is this cross-cultural wellness model. And since the 70s, so for 40 going on 50 years, you guys, it's really been instrumental and super successful in helping individuals remove their own blocks, such as judgment, blame, shame, the self-condemnation that prevents people from really leaning into love, really embracing love and showing up in their lives with love versus fear. It's based on the power of human connection. So when we're talking about peer support models, it's about regular old humans sitting around together, supporting one another to release those blocks, the self-imposed blocks. The focus is on the role of attitude, like what we hold here and here as the determining factor for the ways that our lives look. Is it filled with love or is it filled with fear? And so much of that is made up here, and we can shift that through our attitudes. The program itself, the model itself, attitudinal healing, peer support group models themselves are replicable. And I think that's really important. The fact that it's replicable is really important because so much of like research-based stuff or evidence-based things, there is a barrier to entry due to cost or the complexity, or that somebody has to hold some specialized skill. This is just ordinary humans, man, just supporting one another. There are AH centers all over the place. In fact, on that little video, did you see the big red blotch over Hawaii? I'm shooting this video from Hilo, Hawaii. And on this island, on the other side in Kona, we'll have Trish. So those of you who are thinking about showing up to the peer support groups starting in December as the prerequisite to train the trainer. We're doing a peer support model, train the trainer, facilitated by and led by Trish, myself, and several other facilitators from around the world. So hopefully you'll be joining us for that. But Jerry and Diane have been coming to Oahu since the 90s that I'm aware of. So many people talk about attitudinal healing, have practiced attitudinal healing principles in their own life for a very long time in our personal communities. And there is kind of a cool resurgence for us here on the islands of Hawaii in the recent few years. So it's really exciting to be a part of that. So a really cool part of attitudinal healing that I want to just touch on here is the foundation really was created with young children who had terminal illnesses, who were asking the big questions, like, what happens when you die? Right? And like, can you imagine? I mean, it's difficult for me to imagine, even though I know I was a child at one point, but being burdened with such big questions, but then having the support to find some answers, and that answer being love. So here's one of the descriptors that I love, I think the most, because AIDS, growing up in the 80s, becoming a teen, coming to yourself in the 80s was really scary, because that's kind of the development of our sexual bodies, understanding of this like human connection that needed to happen for humans to continue on. And yet we were taught with so much fear. And I don't know exactly what I was thinking. I'm gonna have to do some thinking on that, but I know that I was really scared. I know that I couldn't even think about the nuances of sex or love or relationships or anything like that, because this thing about AIDS, and if you get it, you're gonna die, was super imposed on top of all this education. I don't think our parents and adults and educators were trying to scare us to death, but I know that I was feeling that to my core. So the answer had to be, well, you just don't touch anybody, right? Otherwise, you're going to get this thing that's going to kill you. It's interesting to talk about that in the time of COVID pandemic. I mean, life just keeps repeating itself. But what I found really interesting was that some of Jerry's students, patients, who were sitting in attitudinal healing circles at the beginning were these kids who had AIDS. And look at the marketing that you see here. It's, I have AIDS, please hug me. I can't make you sick. I mean, how simple, how simple. And the pictures of outstretched arms with the desire and the need to connect. That is the core of attitudinal healing. And this is actually the sticker that the World Health Organization used as one of the marketing strategies to help shift the perspective from fear, which is what I was taught, to, okay, maybe we don't have to be so fearful of humans with this thing. The heart of attitudinal healing is the belief that in the extraordinary ability of ordinary people, children, you, me, ordinary people, to be of help to one another. So it removes some of the gatekeeping that happens around mental health awareness and mental health access. Because so much of the research, or you need a special person with a specialized thing in order to help one another, it removes some of that. It's not to say that those aren't necessary and needed, but it's to say that, hey, there are ways that humans are designed that we can maybe implement and talk through and work out that could be helpful. Disconnection is detrimental. So what we need is connection. And you know what? Who can connect? Ordinary people, you and me. So Jerry saw that it is possible to obtain peace of mind no matter the condition, because the conditions that he was looking at was just like children who are inflicted with life-threatening diseases. If they can shift their mind to obtain peace in that moment, but you know, children are much better at being present, right? So we have something to learn from them. So I don't know, we can call all children ordinary. I mean, we're all born pretty extraordinary and we're talked out of that eventually, but that's a different training. Okay. So the approach and philosophy is based on the universal value, not on any particular faith or belief system. People from all walks of life, and you saw that in the video. People from all walks of life, cultures, and beliefs volunteer, support, or participate in using attitudinal healing principles. So if you're wondering if this is going to mesh well with your cultural practices, or if because you belong to this or that church, please know that this is not dogma and that you are invited into the space to talk about your attitude, the choices that you make around how you want to feel in this moment. Now that we've gone over kind of what attitudinal healing is and a little bit about the history of attitudinal healing, I want to get you right into how each group and how each meeting is conducted. There is a guideline to ensure that we are meeting with one another with safety in mind, so that within that container, we can express and wrestle with and struggle with maybe these concepts. And that requires vulnerability, because this is not just about thinking the right thoughts or getting information about the right things. This is a practice on how do we really feel about this? And can I say this out loud with other people? So these guidelines are reiterated at the beginning of every meeting. So this might be helpful to you, so that you know that you're not just thrust in with a bunch of strangers and asked to talk about your deepest, darkest secrets. Guidelines are important. And I might encourage you to even use these guidelines in other arenas of your life. Do you have rules of engagement for the way that your family gets together and what kinds of conversations you guys might have? Is there a sense of safety within different groups that you are participating in? And if there are not, please feel free to use some of these guidelines. Guidelines for attitudinal healing groups. The intention of the group is to use the principles of attitudinal healing as tools for learning and personal transformation. So these are tools. Number 2, in the groups, we recognize that love is listening. And we agree to listen with an open heart, to give mutual support, and to practice non-judgment while listening and sharing. Number 3, we are here to heal ourselves. We are not here to give advice or to change anyone's beliefs or behaviors, because being accepted for who we are makes it easier to accept others. Do you see the both parts? I love that. Number 4, we share from our own experience. By risking and exposing our own emotional state, we find common experience that allow us to feel connected with one another. Number 5, we respect ourselves and each other as unique. We recognize that each person's process is important, not our judgment of it. Number 6, we support each other's inner guidance and assist one another in finding our own best answers. Number 7, the role of student and teacher are interchangeable. They fluctuate from one to the other, regardless of age or experience. That's really important in a peer support group where there is a facilitator. It's not the facilitator's job to teach. It's a facilitator's job to facilitate the meeting. But when we show up, we're there to kind of expose our own emotional state and to really challenge ourselves to learn from one another no matter what, and to know that we are teaching at the same time. I love that one, and you're going to see that language again in the principles. Guideline number 8, we practice being with others. This is so important. I can send you guys all of these guidelines and the 12 principles. You can print it out on pretty paper and hang it up all over your wall. But the real magic is getting in space with people so that you can practice with one another. And when somebody says something and you feel drawn to it, that you can really feel that connection. Or if you're repelled by that we can practice regulating and seeing if we can really see from that other person's point of view or from their emotional state. That's really powerful, being with others, seeing each person as whole and not defining them by their age, appearance, mood, color, behavior, circumstance, what they're currently saying. So to really be open and go, I'm here to practice being with another person. It's really powerful. Number 9, we agree to keep in mind that we always have a choice between peace, conflict, love, and fear. That concept of choice is so paramount, really important. Number 10, we respect the confidentiality of what we share in group, recognizing its importance for maintaining the group as a place of safety and trust. I got a really great question once around this one. This is really important that you feel confident to share what you learn. So this is not Fight Club, right? It's not, whatever happens in attitudinal healing stays in attitudinal healing, except if it's not your story, right? So yes, talk about the concept. Yes, talk about what you learned. Yes, talk about what you got out of it. Yes, express and practice being with the people you're in with outside of group. It's just that you're not going to go, this girl, Joey, who's the facilitator, her story, you won't want to share my story or your other people's stories. So confidentiality is about respecting the privacy of the person in group so that that person feels like they have the safety to share what it is that they want to share in that group that they might not necessarily share outside of group. But your job is to share what it is that you learned and what you got out of it. So what did you think of those guidelines? Is that something that might be helpful in other arenas of your life? Please go ahead and contemplate that and then use pieces of it if you find helpful, ignoring the typos, of course. So the next piece of attitudinal healing that's really important is the core principles. So attitudinal healing makes some basic assertions about human nature. So contemplate this as I read these out loud for you right now. Love is the essence of who we are. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. That's the basic assumption of human nature. So no matter who the human that you're thinking of, we can think about some really horrific things that are happening on the planet right now. People who are in charge of doing those terrible things, even them. What do you think about that? How does that make you feel as I say, even them? Love is the essence of who a human is. Consider that. So if ever we are othering somebody in a group, your story starts to other, I might, as the facilitator, bring us back to this concept and just question, what do we think about this in the context of the story that you're sharing? That's how a group might go. Attitudinal healing, basic assertion about our human nature. Number 2, we have innate intelligence, inner wisdom that knows what is best for us. So that some of us might call it our gut instinct. Some of us might say intuition. Some of us might feel like a higher power is speaking through us. But no matter how you might identify it or what words you might put to it, the basic assumption that AH makes is that we have, all of us, basic inner intelligence. Now, how we access it, do we listen to it? That's a whole nother story. Doesn't change the fact that we all have this inner wisdom. Assertion number 3, we can tap into our loving essence and inner wisdom through conscious choice. So consciousness, it's about becoming aware and then tapping into that. What do you think about that? And assertion number 4, that there's a lot of S's in that. Assertion number 4, we are interconnected, you and me, us, the planet. We are interconnected with each other and with all of life. So those are the basic assertions. So again, in group, as we're having conversations and as we start telling stories that maybe have a theme of separation, I might remind us of these basic assertions. And then it's not as a judgment, but it's to ask, like, what do we think about these basic assertions in the context of the story that has you feeling so disconnected from one another? And then it might be then the participants and the group's job to kind of consider that and see how that feels and then have a conversation around that. So that's how the basic assertions might be used in our peer support groups. So overall, the purpose of these groups, when we get together for these peer support groups, I've been doing some groups at Department of Human Services because I'm funded by the state of Hawaii in contract year 2021 and 2022 to do some presentations around attitudinal healing. But in the groups, when there's more dialogue and interaction, the purpose is for us to share whatever story might be popping up for you. And right now, the holidays are coming up, right? So in the context of that holiday coming up, the question that we want to be exploring together is, what does it take to experience inner peace right now, the holiday season, right now, given the circumstances of my life? The fact that we're still in COVID, the fact that you have feelings about your family, the fact that there's complicated histories, the fact that you might not like your current circumstances. So what would it take is the question. And it's our job not to give answers or even assert that there is a right answer. It's to explore, could you feel more at peace? Could you be filled with more love right now? So the way that we might be doing that is to use the 12 principles of attitudinal healing, but it's really important for us to remember that this is not the 10 commandments, right? It's not to be treated as dogma. The intention is to help us clarify our own beliefs and values by considering, how would the world look? How would the world feel? How would it seem? What attitude might I hold when I look through the lenses of these principles? So remember that as I put these principles up on our screen right now. So here are the 12 principles of attitudinal healing. When you come into group, you will have access to them. I will give it to you in a PDF. You're welcome to print these out. You could take a screenshot right now and keep it with you on top of your desktop or on your phone, should you choose. But these are the 12 principles of attitudinal healing. So we'll read through these during the groups. And then whatever pulls you for that day, you might look at the circumstances of your life through that lens. So number 1, the essence of our being is love. You saw that already. We talked about that already. So if today I'm really feeling like there are monsters living among us, if I'm looking at current circumstances or I'm looking at world news and I'm like, oh, that person is a monster. And that's making me feel tight and that's making me feel less loving. This is how I might use that principle, is like, what if the essence of our being is love? What do I have to do? What has to happen in my body? What has to happen in my thought to give that consideration to this other human being who did this terrible, terrible thing? Yeah. So this is not for the other person. This is not to help shift their attitude. This is for us so that we feel better in this moment. And if we feel better, perhaps we'll show up differently in the life that we're living, and maybe we'll impact others differently. That's the thought. Number 2, health is inner peace and healing is letting go of fear. Maybe I had some weird, twisted thoughts about what healing actually is. But what if it's just simply every time fear shows up, my job is to let that go, and that represents health. Number 3, giving and receiving are the same. How many of you guys feel like you're taken advantage of in your life? That people take. So what if I could shift that attitude and go, if giving and receiving are the same, then how might I frame this idea that people keep taking from me? How might I frame that differently? Now, I'm not saying that some of us need boundary work. Some of us are giving our time and our energy too freely. Okay, and we might want to show up those boundaries. So this is not about boundaries. That's a different conversation. But what if we could look at our life differently and say, when I'm giving, I don't have to think about the other person taking. I can say, when I give, what's the reason that I'm giving? And what am I receiving in that giving? And how might you feel differently about your day? Number 4, we can let go of the past and of the future. This is basic mindfulness 101. So if I'm letting go of the past and I'm letting go of this future, then what's left right now is what's left. You know, we often talk about, maybe not clinical depression, but this idea of being depressed as an unhealthy clinging on to the past. And this idea of anxiety or anxiousness, and not to say medication and medical interventions aren't helpful. They are, and please get that if that's what you need. But also, it is this unhealthy clinging onto a future that we have no possible control over. So what might be helpful is to figure out how we can anchor ourselves in this present moment more often by letting go of the past and the future, and then notice how you feel. Number 5, now is the only time there is, and each instant is for giving. Consider that for a moment. And what would your day look like if this is the lens that you put on in the morning and walk through your day looking for instances for giving? Yeah. 6, we can learn to love ourselves and others by forgiving rather than judging. So often our issue isn't that I've done something wrong, is that I continue to judge myself for doing that wrong thing again and again and again. What if I can just do the wrong thing and then go, oh crap, that was the wrong thing. Okay, now I know better. I'm going to do better, but I'm going to let go of that and not keep judging myself as an unworthy person. And instead, let that go and love myself instead. How might your day look? How might your week look? How would your life look? Just consider it. Number 7, we can become love finders rather than fault finders. How often do you look around for things that you can correct, things that you can tell people how to do better, right? Like, who died and made us hall monitor for the rest of our lives? What if I could just go around blasting out love, amplifying love? In the same way, have anybody ever go to puppy training and you've been told to catch your puppy doing something good? Or maybe that's parenting classes. But what if you were charged with finding all the good things, all the love that you see? How might you watch news differently, right? And then focusing on all the helpers that show up, Mr. Rogers stuff, right? Look at all the helpers that show up. What if you came home and go, okay, the sink is full of dishes. I told him to do the dishes. An easy thing to hang on to, right? But what if you really went inside and go, okay, I'm going to overlook the dishes for right now, and I'm going to find something that I can highlight, something loving to say, because I am a love finder, gosh darn it, not a fault finder. Number 8, we can choose and direct ourselves to be peaceful inside, regardless of what is happening outside. We've talked about this a couple of times already in this video. Number 9, we are students and teachers to each other. Here it is again. Remember I said it's going to come up again. What does that look like? How might that alter in a world where it's very hierarchical, right? We listen to the teachers. We don't question authority. What might it look like if I could just show up and go, hey, I might have something to learn from this little kid. I might have something to learn from this new employee that came into our building. Oh man, how might the whole world change just on that principle alone? Number 10, we can focus on the whole of life rather than the fragments. So often we fragment things. And if you've been a participant in some of my other trainings, I talk often about this idea of anytime there's separation, there's space for pain. So anytime we're fragmenting, that means there's spaces all over, there's space for pain. What if we could zoom out a little bit and look at the whole of life? So when I'm dealing with my child, they're no longer just my child. They're this whole person, right? And I get to see them as a whole being trying to navigate this world and not just failing at how I've taught them to be as my child, right? Sometimes we can have our own, so much pain around our relationship to our children because we have fragmented them to this role of being our children. So that's how I might look at the whole of life rather than the fragments. Number 11, since love is eternal, death need not be viewed as fearful. Oh, this is really important. And I think we can go, oh God, that's such a, toxic positive statement. But remember, this is coming from a history where we're looking at little children who are diagnosed with terminal illness, who are the foundation of attitudinal healing. So this isn't just a pie in the sky, just, throwaway statements. This is really talking about the essence of who we are, this part of us that go on when the body dies, right? So then if that could truly be believed with every fiber of my being, how might my life look different? And then finally, number 12, I want to tie this back to number 1 in that story I brought up. We can always perceive others as either loving or fearful and giving a call of help for love. So when we're looking at life and we're seeing news of people just behaving like monsters, and then I guided us to think about, well, them too, the essence of they too are love. But if I'm feeling like a little bit of, oh, no, they're not, then maybe I can combine that with number 12, going, what if we all started off as this loving being, but life has a way of compounding trauma and tragedy and suffering. And so ultimately, that light can be dimmed. The essence of who we are feels like it died, but it might be buried. And from underneath, you can see people calling out for help for connection, for healing. So sometimes I combine the two of those together when I'm trying to go, this person who's across the world that I'm seeing in a news story, why are they causing me stress? Well, because we're communal beings and we just do that, right? So if I didn't want them to cause me stress, I might go, oh God, that person who did that horrible thing, I wonder in what way they're calling out for help. And then I might be able to find somebody close to me, near me, that I could go out and reach and connect with and support. So this is how the 12 principles might be used. But the challenge is when we come together is for you to look at your own life stories, the things that might be bothering you, the things that might be causing glitches, and how you might use one of these lenses to put on top of your story and how you might feel differently around that. So what are your thoughts about those principles of attitudinal healing? And did any of them jump out at you? Did any of them make you go, ooh, I could use that? Or did any of them go, that seems, yeah? The principles themselves aren't what's important, but it's your interaction with it. Yeah, it might be a clue as to where you might want to start or what you might have questions around. So that's why I would invite you to a group. There are attitudinal healing groups that are happening all over the world. And because of what's happening in our current life, many of them are available on Zoom. I myself facilitate several. So I'm going to invite you to our Attitudinal Healing and the holidays next Monday and Tuesday. So that's the last Monday and Tuesday of November of 2021. So if you're in time, I invite you to register and show up for that. There's also a 6-week support group where the focus really is on interaction and your stories and your application of some of these principles. So I invite you to attend there. There are other concepts and other kind of awareness points that I will guide us around, and then questions, and we will talk in big groups. And then we will also have some breakout groups with smaller groups, maybe dyads, maybe 4, depending on how big our groups are. Whether there's 20 people or 2 people, I do facilitate that group because it's meaningful and powerful. And as long as there's 2 of you, 3 makes a group. So as long as there is at least 3 of us, the workshops will go on. So I look forward to meeting you. I look forward to the questions that you might have. I look forward to how you apply this in your life. So please reach out to me. And please reach out to the Practice Center. And also Attitudinal Healing International has such a deep, deep well of information. I will link that below as well. Thank you so much for being with me here for our introduction to Attitudinal Healing. And I look forward to working with you.
We've got a few minutes left, and what I wanted to do with the remaining time is just hear one story from each of you of a person who was influenced by these principles and turn their life around, or something that an example of how the attitudinal healing principles may have affected someone in a positive way.
Well, I remember a guy by the name of Jerry Jampolsky
He really got affected.
who was scared, quite scared most of his childhood, and didn't pass grades very well because he was the bottom of the class. Turned out to be an alcoholic, and collected friends who were alcoholics so I could deny I was an alcoholic, and had a lot of years of therapy and psychoanalysis, and still was pretty depressed and pretty unhappy. And learning about changing my mind can change my life, changed my life, changing my belief structure that nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible.
So you really turned your own life around using these principles.
Exactly.
Well, that's of course why you teach
I'm still doing it every day.
And actually, you know, that's I think it's important to know that none of us are perfect, and we have to work at this, right?
Oh,
Yeah, we're a work in
that's right.
process, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We just seem to have a little bit more fun lately. Not take ourselves so seriously.
Right.
You know, and the story that came to my mind, I mean, there's so many, but one is a beautiful person that we came to know from Idaho named Zelinda Caruso. And now this is Linda Caruso Luger. And she had 4 sons, and her son worked in a bar. And late one night, a casual acquaintance came to his home and killed him. The person was also under the influence. And it was very painful and very bitter. And this man went to prison and was in prison for, 8 years. And she, every time he came up for parole, she did everything possible, of course, to keep him in prison. And then she came across, actually, it was Love is Letting Go of Fear, I think, Jerry's first book. And just realized that maybe there's another way of looking at this, because in those condemnations in her own mind and heart, her health was starting to go, her hair was falling out, she was getting a skin disease, and so much pain in her own life. And she finally got to the point where she was so miserable, she said, there's got to be another way. And so the guidance that she got was, while she was praying one day, was to go see the prisoner. And she went, there is no way I'm going to see this person. I want to see this person rot, for the rest of his life, and then when he dies, he can go to hell, But she kept getting it. And so finally she went to the prison, and she was able to get, in to see him. Long story short, at first she said, this isn't about you, this is about me. He was afraid of her because he thought she was going to hurt him. And they gradually came to understand and to see and to know each other. And then she started to see some good things in him. And then she started to see how imprisoned his parents were also.
that they had lost their son. And gradually in time, the short version of the story is that she went to finally to one of the hearings and asked for him to be released. And the guards had tears in their eyes. I mean, nobody could believe this happened. And the day that he was released, she met him at the prison. She took him in the car and drove him home to his parents and returned
Wow.
him to his parents. He then married, had children, and she has stayed in touch with him over the years, and he has a life that is really worthwhile. Forgiveness is a powerful, powerful tool, and attitudinal healing was the way that she found that.
Wow, that's an incredible story.
How much more time do we have?
We have about 6 minutes.
I'd like then to raise some questions, if I may,
Okay.
and that is to the audience. Like, what would happen if everyone, including the listeners, would wake up in the morning and say, today I'm going to go through this day, determine that I'm not going to hurt myself or other people with my thoughts or actions? What do you think might happen to you in your own peace? What would happen if you really believe that it's not people that hurt you in the past that's hurting you, but it's only your own thoughts and attitudes that you're experiencing right now about those things? What would happen to you if you really believed that? What would happen if you stopped interpreting people's behavior to decide who's guilty and who's innocent? What would happen instead if you became a love finder rather than a fault finder? What would happen if you did that last lesson, the 12th one, where you each day said, today I'm only going to see people as loving me, whether they're fearful, giving me a call of help for love? Can you imagine how you might shift gears in terms of the sense of peace, the sense of harmony that you might have with yourself and with others? What would happen if you stopped judging yourself? You know, about 50% of people have not forgiven their parents. They're blaming their parents for all the bad things that are happening to them. What would happen if you totally forgave your parents? And those of you who are divorced, about 75% of people that are divorced have not forgiven their spouses. What would happen if you really felt that forgiveness is the key to your happiness and peace? Sometimes those kind of questions can really help us move in a whole different direction.